2014 of Changes, the Google Plus Hangout on air with Sally Ember, EDD, that's me, and today's guest, author and radio host and publishing house owner and many other things, Chase Knightley. Tell us about yourself, Chase.
Hi, Sally. My name is Chase Knightley. I'm the author of a horror novel, Jeffrey Smiles, which was released earlier this year. I have another novel, which is the sequel to that, coming out next month, actually. And I've also, I'm a member of Dark Moon Press. That's my publishing house. It's not mine, actually. I don't own it. It's owned by Corvus Nocturnum, who has lots of great authors. And I'm also the owner of WZ13 Radio and WYOU Radio.
So you own 2 radio stations? Does that mean that you operate them out of your house, or you have a building or something like that?
We operate them. I have the main station here in my lovely studio, which looks kind of barren at the moment. But yeah, we operate. This is the main studio here, and we have satellite studios where DJs from around the world can broadcast on the shows.
Wow. Well, I'm going to put a couple of these URLs up for people that are right on the event page. For those of you that are watching on Twitter or on YouTube, or you're watching this not live, then I'm putting them up here so you'll see them. That's www.chaseknightley.com. That's his official website where everything can be found. And www.darkmoonpress.com. That's Dark Moon Press, all one word. And that's where you can find his collaborative publishing house with not just horror, I understand it, right?
That's correct. They do. It's. I guess I'd have to say they're a little on the darker side, but they do a lot of New Age, metaphysical, paranormal, and so on. Yep.
Wow, that's really interesting because, as you know, I write in the paranormal area using psi skills mostly, not shapeshifters, werewolves, or vampires.
Right.
But I'm really interested in the paranormal, and that was another thing that attracted me to having you on the show, because you have, I don't know what you would call it, a business, an operation in which you investigate the paranormal. Is that so?
I do. I'm the founder and the owner of Castle Hill Paranormal, and we research all forms of the paranormal. Pretty much, we stick mostly to New England, where I am now, but I have had the chance to do investigations all over the East Coast.
So I'm going to put up something about that now because I'm really interested in having you talk about it, which is that you have an anthology coming out, I guess, in a few weeks?
Yeah, actually, I believe I just got the word from Corvus and Dark Moon Press that it's ready to go. I believe it's being sent to the printers, and it's going to be out in the next couple of weeks. The book is called Lost Whispers, and it's true accounts from other authors for Dark Moon Press. I know there's a few hosts from paranormal programs that have written stories. The introduction is written by Corvus himself. It's going to be a very, very interesting book, and it's all true accounts of the paranormal.
Okay, so do some name dropping because everybody wants to know who are the celebrities that might be in this book. Don't have to name them all, but give us a few.
Oh gosh. Well, I know Tim Shaw, who is the host of the Black Cat Lounge, he's in the book. Corvus Nocturnum, of course, and oh God, you know, you kind of caught me off guard because I know there's
a table of contents in front of you. Right?
I don't. I haven't received the book yet. I haven't, but
Oh, all right. I'll let you off the hook then. You have a story in it called Welcome Home that you say is about some investigating you did at Danvers State Hospital. That's in Massachusetts, right?
Yes. Yep.
So I know you don't want to give the whole farm away here. You want people to buy the book and read the story, but give us just a little snapshot of what that investigation involved in the paranormal work that you do, and you did it right in Massachusetts.
I did, and I can tell you. Actually, what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory. Danvers State Hospital, as many people realize, was a huge institution here in Massachusetts and has often been referred to as the birthplace of the modern lobotomy. And I know
Ugh.
that's, yeah, I know. But when I was growing up, my mother worked there as an administrator, and I spent pretty much my childhood there. Summer vacations when I wasn't in school and so forth.
No.
I It's very true.
So what? It
She,
was like your summer camp?
yeah, yeah. When I was growing up, well, that's the funny thing. If you've never had the chance to go to, the institution was done under what they called the Kirkbride plan. Kirkbride was a psychiatrist, psychologist, all these different things, and his claim to fame was designing insane asylums all
Oh.
over the world. And what he did, his design was an entire city all in one place. They needed no outside resources. Danvers State Hospital had its own farm, it had its own cattle ranch, laundry services, shops, hospital, everything.
So the people
Everything
who
was.
lived there had things to do, or was it all staffed by paid people?
It was a combination of both. Those who had the ability to work within the facility obviously had jobs in the facility. Many of the doctors and nurses lived on the facility. Yeah,
Wow.
there was a large apartment building there on the facility where many of the doctors and nurses lived.
So it didn't feel so much like a prison as a community.
Now, there were playgrounds, there were all sorts of places, and I remember my mother worked in a building called Hogan Regional Medical Center, and that was one of the facilities in this city. You know, the setup of the city, and she worked there. And I remember many times as a child playing in a small playground that was just outside her office window. Did I lose you? Hello? 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 Hello?
I hope that you are not giving up on us. I got kicked out of this broadcast, which has happened more than once on my Hangouts. Those of you who watch them know that. I'm so sorry, Chase. I'm so sorry to all of our listeners and viewers. I hope you come
Hello?
back, and there you are. Oh, good.
There I am.
I got kicked out.
Oh no!
So
Can you
you
see me
kept
okay?
talking, I hope.
Well, I did, yeah.
Good. Good. You know how to do that, so you just keep doing
Yep.
that.
Okay.
That's excellent.
Yeah. Are we all back and everything?
I'm getting things organized again, but just
Okay.
a recap for me what you were saying while I was absent.
I was telling the story about how my mother had worked at a facility on Danvers State Hospital, and I spent many of childhood there, and actually was I have many memories of playing in a playground that was just outside my mother's office window there on the facility. So
Now, were there other children there, like children of the staff, or were you by
once in a
yourself?
while, yeah.
And what about, did you have any siblings?
Oh, I am one of 5. I am
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 5. I was usually the only one that went there with my mom, basically because the next sibling up is my brother, and he's about 9 years older than I am.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah,
So he didn't
he
need
was,
daycare when you did.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. So
You were on your own. So you were around people that would talk to you in odd ways or hear things you
absolutely.
couldn't hear and
Mm-hmm.
see things you couldn't see.
Absolutely.
And as a child, you would just accept that, right? Like, okay, people can
It
do things
was,
I can't do.
yeah, I mean, it was really nothing different for me. As a matter of fact, when the facility closed, we ended up adopting somebody from the facility. And we, sorry, I seem to be going blank on my computer here. I don't know if you can still hear me.
I can hear you and I can
Okay.
see you. But I think it's because I'm trying to load this comment tracker and the Hangout goes a little crazy.
He was in his 40s, and let me see. I'm trying to think now. When the facility shut down, it was shut down mostly for lack of funding and things like that. And many of the people that were there, they were either sent back to family members or put in other programs, and some of them were just simply let out the door.
All right,
And
yeah, thanks to Ronald Reagan. That's what he did to all of us.
yeah, that's why, and a lot of people speculate that's why we have such a high homeless population in the areas that had these institutions, because literally when it closed, when they could find no families or anything else like that for the hundreds and hundreds of people that were there, they opened up the
Absolutely.
doors, and that was it.
Oh, and this was all over the country. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was Danvers State Hospital was one of the ones hit by that, and we actually adopted my brother Dana from there, and he lived with us for a couple of years before he got to the point where we had to put him in a different program.
Wow. I think that is so unbelievable that you were part of this community,
Mm-hmm.
and this community was really important to everybody, actually, not just the people who live there, because
Yeah.
all of these people have families and loved ones who needed them to get some kind of care.
Mm-hmm.
And so here they were getting care, and then Ronald Reagan and the people in his administration and their infinite ignorance decided that's not important.
Yeah.
Throw them back into the regular community. We don't care. And
Yeah.
they did the same thing with people that were developmentally disabled as well. They
Right.
closed, reduced the rooms in a lot of those facilities. So that's a horror story in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Because it created a lot of heartache and a lot of problems for people that used to live there, for the communities they then began to try to inhabit, and for all of their families.
It was a very and it actually happened on the heels of through the 50s and 60s, early 60s. People were being put in these institutions for the most unbelievable reasons.
Oh, right.
A teenage girl would be put into one of these facilities if she was caught drinking, or if she was pregnant, or something along those lines.
It's
Same
true.
things. And the other sad part about it was you were getting these kids who were born perhaps physically deformed or something like that, but certainly, of sound mind, and they were still getting put in there because a lot of times families were embarrassed to have them and just didn't want to deal with it. So they would put them in this facility, and that equaled out to thousands of people locked away in this facility, many of them for no good reason. And
Yes.
it just, when I was a kid, when I was going there, I never thought of it as a bad place. I know, like many of these institutions, it had a very bad reputation, but
Hmm.
I never thought of it like that. It was just for me, and it was another part of my life. My mom worked there. I went there. I knew many of the people that worked there or resided there, and
So,
so
did
on.
let me just take a leap here. Did some of your horror and fantasy stories arise from your experiences as a child?
A little bit, yeah. Actually, as a matter of fact, the prologue to Jeffrey Smiles takes place at Danvers State Hospital.
Wow. So
Yeah,
that was the fodder, you might say, for some of your creativity.
I think so. Yeah, and also Castle Hill Paranormal. Castle Hill refers to Danvers State Hospital. Danvers State Hospital was often referred to in surrounding communities as the Castle on the Hill.
Wow. So we have one of our commenters here who's agreeing with you
Hmm.
that the whole idea of putting people out on the street is a terrible, terrible story. Thank you, Sheila Strover. She was also on when I was off, and maybe you couldn't see her comments, but she was saying she could see you, she could hear you. Keep
Oh,
going. We
okay.
can't see Sally, but we can hear you. So thank you, Sheila. She's like our little cheerleader over here. She wrote, "Hang in there, Chase." She wanted you to know that she understands. Sheila is a real veteran of Hangouts on Air. She was one of the people that helped train me with Melanie Hall's Lights Camera HOA, which is a training ground for
Oh,
people who want to learn how to be on camera and who
right,
might actually at some point be a guest, but
right.
also for people who might want to be a host, such as I am attempting to be.
Well,
But
you're doing a
I
great
have
job.
been kicked out of every single HOA that I've been in, and for all different reasons. This last one was a brand new reason, and I've had technical problems with every single one. And this time it looks like it might be working to some extent, but I should let you know that when the comment tracker works, it makes my banner look backwards to me, but is it looking forwards to you?
It is. Yep.
All right, then I don't care. Let's talk some more about you. I think it's
Okay.
really interesting that you have this indie rock and roll background, this background with lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, intersex questioning, two-spirited, and queer, and all the other ways we can talk about varieties of gender and sexual orientation identities.
Mhm.
And you have this Facebook page, I Know Who I Am, IKWIA, which I love that name. And then you have all this history with creating radio stations. So where do you want to go? I mean, I just feel so interested in all of it. What
I
is it
try to
you'd
keep
like us
busy.
to know?
I try to keep busy.
I know, I know. The question I had actually that kind of helps this all intersect is how does a queer identity interact with or inspire or become the foundation for writing speculative fiction?
Oh, for me, I have to say that not unsurprisingly, as a kid, I spent a lot of time by myself. I was much younger than my brother and sisters, and although I had lots of friends growing up, I was always kind of one of those introverts. I would so much rather be inside playing with my Star Wars figures than I would be outside throwing a football, And that was just how I was. My problem is that I had this just constantly going imagination. And as soon as I figured out that I could write and create my own stories, I did. And I didn't care about what was on television or anything like that. I always wanted to create my own stories. And I grew up in a time, and you're around my age, and
Oh, you're so nice to say that. That is completely not true. You want to know what year I was
was
born,
one of
dear?
those things. Um,
1954.
wow.
I am 60 years old, sweetie. I'm probably as old as
Wow.
your parents, right?
No, Mom's 83 this year.
Oh, all right. So we're in between. I'm probably as old as
Yeah.
some of your brothers and sisters then.
Right, right. So then that, I mean, we grew up in a time when gay wasn't talked about,
Right.
and it was one of those things. And as a matter of fact, it kind of ties in because if you were gay, you often got put in one of these
Yes.
institutions. So it all
Isn't that
kind of
horrifying? That is a
yeah,
horror story too.
yeah, yeah.
It is.
It was pretty crazy.
A lot of gender queer people got put in, especially if you were a man who was
Absolutely.
effeminate or a
Yep.
woman who was not willing to conform to femininity.
Yep.
Then a lot of people in their families decided that meant that they were insane or they didn't want them to be seen by the public. And
Yeah.
they would give them a lobotomy, like they did to Judy Garland, by the way, among
Hmm.
other people, or they would shut them up in these places and never let them out. It's really, really an awful chapter in society's history all around the world, really.
Yeah, it is. I mean, these were over in Europe. They were all over this country and Canada and everything. It's just, and I think that's why I take so much of an influence when I'm doing horror stories and so on, because it's real horror. It's right there. I don't write about monsters that come out of the ground and stuff like that. That's not the type of writing that I do. I write about the horror that can be seen in people right next to you.
Yeah.
That's what I do. All my characters um, are somebody you could walk by on the street, you could sit next to on the bus, anything.
You're a
They're not.
David Bowie fan, I bet.
I am. Oh, well, yeah, I am. I'm a David
The
Bowie.
Devil Inside, right?
I
That
am.
song
Yeah.
is running through my head, right? And
Yep.
he's certainly genderqueer and very excited to demonstrate that for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He was an
Yeah.
inspiration for a lot of people.
He is. Yeah. So it was kind of one of those things. I spent a great deal of my time denying and hiding who I was from my family because I'll tell you, my father made Archie Bunker look like a liberal.
Oh,
Yeah. My mom was very quiet. She did her thing, and that was pretty much it. But it was just there were no outlets, there was no anything. So at the age of 16, I was one of the last people in New England to be allowed to go into the military at the age of 16. Uh,
wow. I didn't even know they allowed that.
they don't anymore. You had to go under a special directive for parental consent.
So you
Your parents.
chose to enter the military?
I did.
I'm
I did.
scratching my head. I'm like,
I know.
I don't see the timeline here in
I,
your life story.
well, things were getting really difficult for me at around the age of 16, and my brother had joined the military before me, and things were looking up for him. He had a great girlfriend and stuff like that, and I just didn't. And my family really started looking at me like, well, what's going on here? He's not like other boys.
Oh, so
So
now we have a comment again from Sheila that goes along with that.
yeah,
She says,
yeah,
those stories are pretty scary.
yeah, yes,
They're
very
real
much so.
life stories about being unaccepted or unwelcomed or
Yeah,
unappreciated or unable to reveal your real self.
absolutely, absolutely, and unfortunately, in many instances, they're written from firsthand experience, and like with myself, I mean, these are all things that I suffered through, and back then there just wasn't that type of outlet. We didn't have, not everybody had a computer in their house. Not everybody had
Shoot, you're frozen. Okay, well, if I'm not frozen and I'm
That
not
that
kicked out, oh, there you are, unfrozen. Good. Keep going.
but in a time when this was the norm, if you were against that, if you were even considered gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever, you had no outlet, and you often felt that you were all by yourself. You know, so I did. I spent a lot of time hiding and staying within myself and not really wanting or having anything to do with anybody else. And that's where a lot of my stories come from, is because that's what I did when I spent that time.
Well, I
So I,
really understand that. I'm bisexual, but I didn't even know that term until I was in my early 20s. And when
yeah,
I was in grade school, I knew I was attracted to both girls and boys, and I thought everybody was. I just thought that was just
yeah,
ordinary. But
yeah,
when I got into junior high school, there was a phys ed teacher that spoke to me very harshly one day. And it turns out, of course, that she's a lesbian, but I didn't know that at the time. But
right,
she was a self-hating, internally oppressed lesbian who would put out very harsh things to other people, especially kids in her care. So she's
right,
one of those people you don't want as an educator. But she said something to me because I wore colors of yellow and green on a Thursday. And she came over to me and she said in a really loud voice, you know, if you wear yellow and green on Thursday, everyone's going to know you're a lesbian. Well, first of all, I didn't even know what a lesbian was. And
right,
secondly, what could that possibly have to do with what colors I wear?
right,
And thirdly, what the hell was her problem, right?
right,
It took me years to figure out what that was about and what her problem really was. And
right.
I wish I could go back. You know, I did actually go back and try to find her at one point, decades later, but she had retired and gone somewhere, who knows. But I just wanted to look her in the eye and say, what the heck is wrong with you?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because
It's
that was just a terrible thing for her to be doing.
it's kind of like the uh, back in the 80s and everything. If you were a boy, if you had your ear pierced on the right side, you were gay, or on the left side, you were straight. And I just, and I'll never forget when I first got my ear pierced, it was kind of knowing that was like the thought process. I went out and I went to the piercing pagoda, which I don't even think exists anymore. But yeah, it was in all the little shopping malls back then. And I got my ear pierced on the right side. And I remember the girl that was about to pierce my ear kept looking at me like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yes, but it's on the wrong side." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And I'm like, "No, it's not." you know. And yeah, so I mean, it was one of the things, and that's why I went into the army.
In support of your recognition of yourself from David Leopold. Thank you, David, for
Thank you,
saying better
David.
late
Yeah.
than never.
Yeah, it was. Thanks, David. It's why that was why I went into the military, because I joined the army thinking to myself that if anything is going to make me into a man, a manly man, then the army is going to be it. I didn't take into account that I was going to be sleeping, showering with, and spending all of my days with 150 men at a time. Nothing
You
gay
really
about that.
didn't. Come on. That wasn't the whole reason that you joined the military.
No, believe it or not, it wasn't. No, believe it or not, I actually went there thinking to myself, well, this is going to make me a man. And I'll never forget when I stepped into the barracks for the first time, all these men there, and I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work quite like I thought.
That's like a chocoholic thinking, I think I'll work in a chocolate factory. It'll
Right.
cure me of my addiction. I'll get sick of it or something.
Yeah, I'll go work at Hershey and everything will be fine. Yeah. Yeah,
Well, you were also in the military. Let me just understand your age a little bit. You were in the military before Bill Clinton was the president.
I was. Yeah.
So there wasn't even don't ask, don't tell. It was just kick you
No.
out if they find out you're gay and beat the shit out of you in the meantime. Did you get attacked?
Discover. No, I didn't get discovered. I didn't get found out or anything, and that was very simply because I didn't do anything. I didn't. I didn't make myself known in any way. And as a matter of fact, I remember in basic training, there was this very attractive young man who was maybe a year or two older than I was. And I was, of course, very attracted to him. And I would often, thinking it was in a buddy style, I would often, put my arm around his shoulders or something like that, And apparently I was doing it so much that he said, people are going to start thinking you're gay.
Uh,
And yeah, and that shut that closet door even tighter, throw a padlock on it, done. So yeah, I didn't even decide to acknowledge that part of my life until I came out of the Army. When I was I only spent about 2 years in. I came out when I was 18 years old.
so you came out of the Army, and then soon after that, you actually had a formal coming out?
Yeah, but not by me, by the person I was seeing at the time.
Okay. Well, this is a good week to be talking about this. I just need to bring us into the context of the United States. October 10th, as some of you might know, is National Coming Out Day. And when I invited you to be on the show, or you asked if you could be on the show, and we picked this date, I wasn't even thinking about that. But when I looked at the calendar this morning, I realized that. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because there is that whole movement that I adore, which is the whole celebrities and authors and other people making videos about it's never too late. What is the name of it?
It gets better.
It gets better. Yeah. Right. It gets better. Yep. And I think that is so important for young people, and even for adults who are still not sure that it's safe or appropriate to recognize your identity as someone who isn't completely mainstream, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, it's it was very important for me when I was 18 years old. I was deep in the closet. I was dating somebody who lived. Now you're from the New England area.
Well, I lived there a long time. Yeah.
Okay, I am in Haverhill, Mass, which is right on the border of New Hampshire. No, I'm from Haverhill, Mass. I actually live in Nashua, New Hampshire, but I was living in Haverhill, Mass, and I was secretly dating somebody in Framingham, Mass. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to understand that, but it's about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes away from each other, depending on traffic. I was actually because when I came out of the Army, I went back to school, and I was actually skipping school to go see this person on a daily basis. And what had happened was I had said to him, he was one of those people, you have to come out of the closet, you have to be who you are, you have to do this, and I couldn't at that time, and I told him one night, I says, instead of coming here, I'm gonna have to go hang out with my other friends. They're all wondering where I am, what's going on, all of this, and he agreed. So I went and I hung out with my friends, and when I got home that night, it was about 2:30 in the morning. My mother was sitting there waiting for me. While I was out, he called looking for me, knowing I wasn't there. And when my mother asked who he was, he told her the whole story.
Wow. Yeah,
outed me completely, told her all about how we had been dating and this and that and all this other stuff. So when I came home at 2:30 in the morning, my mother was like, she just kind of went off. We got into a little argument, and it didn't go well, but I was able to kind of quell it down for the night, and then the next day it started right back up again. The result was, without getting into gory details, the result was me becoming homeless.
Wow, I'm so sorry, Chase.
It was not a fun experience. I was homeless in New England just before winter for about 7 months before my mother actually decided to come back around. Now I will say that after she came back around and decided to accept me back in the house, she has made an unbelievable turnaround. She's looking for boyfriends for me. She's, oh yeah, she's all about it now, and she realized after all was said and done, the mistakes she had made. So I now have a great relationship with Mom. But
Wow, so glad to
yeah,
hear that.
yeah, it came around, and it was a tough road, but it came around, and that's one of the reasons why I created the group ICWIA, or I Know Who I Am, because I want people to have what I didn't have. I want people to have the resources, the information around the world, because now more than ever, we're at this point in our life where the fight for equality has never been more important.
Well, I
And
want to let people know how they can find that group on Facebook. I just put the URL up there.
mhm.
And also how they can find you and find you as an author, find you on Twitter,
Mhm.
talk to you about what you're talking about today. Whenever you're listening to this, whoever listens to this, because it's going to be archived on YouTube, would be able
I
to
love.
find you. And this ICWIA is IKWIA. I Know
Mhm.
Who I Am. And it is on Facebook. And people can find you on Twitter, Chase Knightley Author
Mhm.
on Facebook, and Chase_Knightley on Twitter. And I think that's just really wonderful that you've made those avenues available for people who might not ordinarily have anyone to talk to, whose parents don't come around, who are homeless or unwelcome in their communities.
Yeah, it was such a frustrating time, and I mean, at that time for me, things were just starting to happen, like things like PFLAG, which is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, was just opening up. It was just becoming a thing, and there. And I remember I actually tried to belong to a group at the time called BAGLY, which was Boston's Association of Gay and Lesbian Youth. Um, but it was in Boston. I was in Haverhill. I didn't have that ability to get back and forth and everything at the time. But that was really it. Unless you were a part of those organizations, you went to a gay club. And being 18 years old, cute and adorable as I was, I could only occasionally get into a gay club. So those were my only sort of outlets at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want that for this generation. I
Right.
want I want so much more for them to have. I still, to this day, I don't live in the closet. I mean, obviously, but I'm one of those people that, and it kind of stinks that I have to say it this way, but unless I tell you, you're not going to know I'm gay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have. Oh, and I hate this.
Well, no, but
I
basically what
don't.
you're saying is you've learned to pass.
Right,
And a
right, and I
lot of
had
people
to.
have to do that. A lot of people
I
in
know.
invisible minorities spend an inordinate amount of time learning to pass.
Absolutely,
For
and
the
that's
people who can't pass, we need to advocate
absolutely.
for all of
I
us.
yeah, I mean, that's just it buggers me that we still have to go state to state trying to get marriage equality and things like that. It it shouldn't be a question anymore.
I
I
know, we're
mean,
going to look back on this and feel like such morons, right? Because
I know.
basically they're saying you can be married in Idaho, but it won't count in Nevada.
Right.
Like, really?
Right.
Because other things count. If you have
Yeah.
a driver's license or a fishing license, it could be local.
Yeah.
But marriage is supposed to be international.
Yeah. And
To go everywhere you go, you know?
yeah, it's crazy, and I don't understand why that's still the case. I mean, we look back.
It won't be.
I hope 50 years ago, we didn't allow interracial couples to marry.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we look at that now, and we say to ourselves, "Good Lord, what were we thinking?"
What we were
You
thinking.
know,
Well,
why
because
would we do
race is a
something like that?
social construct anyway. It doesn't even exist. There's
Right.
no such thing. And then we made all these laws about it. It's ridiculous anyway. But you're
Yeah.
right. And the tide is turning. There is now more than half of the number of United States states have
Yeah.
legalized gay marriage. That is the tipping point. It's
Yeah.
going to keep going. And even though that hasn't happened yet with other things, it will. And one of them is marijuana legalization. And those aren't connected in any way other than the fact that they're both irrational illegalities.
Right.
And to make rationality a part of legality needs to happen, whatever the topic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you see what happens when we don't.
Yeah, firsthand, you know. We've just gotten to that point where this is not 1956 anymore. You know,
Right.
we need to realize and understand. We scientists discover new and interesting things about our planet every day, every minute of every day. You know, and we don't have a clue about this planet. We don't, as much as we'd like to say we do. But it's amazing to me that what we knew yesterday, we have to change tomorrow because it's not true. We figured out.
It's true.
You know?
Well, that's why I love speculative fiction, and especially science fiction authors, as myself and other people have learned from reading as a kid, and then as those of us who write in those genres, because we sometimes lead the way for scientists. We inspire them to invent things and figure out things that we come up with in our imagination.
Absolutely. Not to kind of show my nerd, but look at Star Trek. You know,
yes.
Oh God, now I'm gonna draw a blank. But like the tricorder he had and the communication devices he had, we have all those now. You know?
I know.
The communicator that Captain Kirk and all of them carried became our flip phone. Now,
in 1967, they would stand in the Star Trek episode in front of a door, and the door would open. That didn't exist in 1967 except in Hollywood, and now it's everywhere.
Now it's at every grocery store and Walmart you go to. It's
exactly.
It's one of those things, and that's why I think it's like it's insane to me to think that still to this day something as fundamental as basic human rights is being fought about.
I know. It's just ignorance and intransigence, and hopefully we will overcome both of those. Because think about this. Just this month, transporter beams, teleportation, and, this is my favorite, a force field have all been actualized, invented, discovered, whatever word you want to use. Now, the force field is being used as an umbrella, which I object to, just on basic principles. You could use a force field for something much more important than to keep the rain off. But the fact that they have invented it and it works has untold possibilities.
Absolutely. I'll tell you that as a child, my very first movie experience, the first time that my parents had ever decided that I was going to be okay in a theater and old enough to be in a theater, was at the opening of Star Wars in 1977.
Yay.
That was, and that, I mean, that has, I'm still a huge Star Wars nerd, you know, but the very first time I ever went to a theater was at the Haverhill Cinema to go see Star Wars on opening night in 1977, and I will never forget my mother telling me that throughout the movie she actually had to poke me to get me to blink, because apparently
you were just open-mouthed and staring.
I was transfixed. There was, you know, that was it. So seeing what I see today and knowing what I know from back then, my hope is that I will live to see Star Wars become a reality. That's just what I'm hoping for. You know?
Well, Rain Dowell just joined us. Rain's another one of my favorite HOA mentors and people, and she says that you made some great points about what we think we know about our planet. Yeah. And I agree with her. And then she pops up with this other part, which is that she wants to know what else we could use a force field for. You know, she's asking me, and I'm thinking, wow, I could think of lots of things. Imagine walking down a street that's known for high crime.
Right.
I have a force field around me to repel everybody.
Absolutely.
Like bullets and muggers and rapists and just anybody who means me harm.
Absolutely. I mean, then you have then you have the defense issues. You know, I mean, our troops, our aircrafts and water vessels and everything, all of which could have a force field around it. If we could manipulate this to a point, we could even come to a point where maybe our planet would have a force field around it.
Yeah, but think about it. If every individual object and person could have their own force field, we would be in permanent peace.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love that.
Yeah, it's well, it's one of those things that the practical applications of it are so plentiful that unfortunately what's going to happen is it's not going to be put out there. And the reason that it's not is somebody is sitting there trying to figure out how much money can I make off of this. Because sadly, that's what it's all about right now, So the discovery of the force field today, we can only hope will lead to the Christmas boutique item from Sharper Image in 2020.
Well, okay, that's the cynical capitalist view. But I have more of an Ursula K. Le Guin and Kate Wilcox socialist speculative fiction point of view, which is that basic human kindness and altruism do exist in a lot of our amygdalae. We've just come up with research in the last few weeks that proves that altruists have a more developed right side of our amygdalae, and psychopaths have an underdeveloped, withered right side of the amygdala. So we need to figure out a way, and I was talking about this with Nicholas Rossis in a previous hangout, but we need to figure out a way to enhance and improve the development of our amygdala.
Well, we need to figure out a way to enhance and improve the development, I think, of every part of us, to be honest. Really. But, I mean, for me, it's, we all have this kind of, it seems to me that when you're thinking about the future and when you're doing science fiction and things like that, you've got one of two outcomes. Either A, we've developed into a completely peaceful society, like you have Star Trek, who now says we're going to work together as a planet and as a people and as a federation, and it's all going to be in the name of peace. Or you have something like Mad Max, where there was a horrible apocalypse, and now everybody is out to kill each other for a gallon of gas. So it's, according to what we look at in science fiction, it's going to go one of two ways. Obviously, we're all hoping for the peaceful society, but I think we've got a really long road before we get there. I think I'm just kind of focused on what little we can do now. I know that I'm probably not going to see a peaceful society in my lifetime. It's just not going to happen. I would love to say I'm wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. But I think the reality is we're not going to see a truly peaceful society until we can dissect those little parts of our existence that cause us to fight: money, religion, so on and so forth. And it's not until we can kind of separate all of those to figure it out that we'll learn to live with each other.
Well, that is a perfect segue, Chase, into the final 10 minutes of our show, which, as you know, I offer you a moment first to remind people of how to find you, how to get in touch with you, what exciting things are coming up in your public life. So let's put up this part again so people know how to reach you, and then talk to us about what's coming up right now for you.
Okay. The very next thing happening with me is my story Welcome Home is going to be in the book Lost Whispers. You'll be able to find that on darkmoonpress.com. Dark Moon Press is also on Facebook and so on. Very shortly after that, my second novel, Darks, is coming out, and that's the sequel to my first novel, Jeffrey Smiles. Let me see, what else do I have going on? Next week, my radio station goes live. You'll be able to find us on z13radio.com. We offer interactive chat, a variety of music, talk shows, so on and so forth. I'd been the owner of that station for quite some time, as well as the other station, WYOU Radio, and earlier in the summer we had to kind of shut them down a little bit to rework and get some different things, but those go live again, I believe, next week. But you can find me on Facebook. Facebook.com/Chase Knightley author. You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Chase_Knightley. Or you can head over to my website, chaseknightley.com, and there's links on my website to my Twitter account and Facebook and so on.
Great, and I put all those URLs on the event page, on the YouTube page, and I just put them on the screen. So everybody who wants to find you can find you. And now our final question for the session, which I wish were longer because I'm having such a good time talking to you.
Same here.
I ask every one of our guests this question, and hopefully you've had a chance to think about it. It's a very big question, and you only get a few minutes, but say the part you want to say. Given all of the local, personal, regional, global, national and global, social, political, environmental, economic, and any other kinds of changes you're aware of, what are your responses? What do you hope for? What do you fear? What do you want to say about changes on this HOA today?
I think changes as it reflects to us as a people needs to happen in a big way. And it happens in small ways all the time. We see now, especially with the fight for equality going state by state, we see these small changes. Small changes are great, but we need a global change. We need a change in how we think. We need a change in how we treat each other, how we act. The basic fact is this is life and nobody gets out alive. We're all headed for the same destination. We're all on this planet together. And we need to start learning that. We need to start understanding that. And not until we understand these things can we grow as a species. You know, we are the only species on the planet that is killing each other over the most mundane of things. What color you are, who you love, things like that. We're the only species on the planet that's doing that. So stop it, first of all. I mean, that's just a given. And secondly, I have to say that we need to step back and we need to start making changes to how we look at the planet. We are slowly, well, not even slowly anymore, it's happening more rapidly than I'd like to admit to, killing off this planet with just completely destroying the resources that it has, when so many other forms of energy and sustainability are available to us. There is no excuse in 2014 going into 2015. There is no excuse for using a fossil fuel powered vehicle. We shouldn't even have them anymore. We have the technology to go beyond that, but somebody hasn't figured out how they're going to make enough money off of it, so it sits dormant. You know
what just happened this week? Speaking of that, some teenagers in Australia entered a contest and won because they figured out a way to make an electric car that goes faster than any electric car has ever gone before. It goes over 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, see, this is what we need to do. We need to start figuring out there's more people on the planet right now than have ever been in history. And we're going to run out of room, and we're going to run out of stuff to use. And we're going to end up being taken over by trash and by, just all these different things. And we need to really change that. If we're going to change anything, we've got to change how. We shouldn't be making a science fiction movie about how we're going to leave this planet and go off into space and populate another planet, because all we're doing is doing what we did here to somebody or another planet that was just sitting there minding its own business. Why are we trying to find another planet to live on? We've got one, this one. Mm-hmm. Let's figure out how to live on it without completely turning it to crap. Wow,
I really appreciate your insights and your motivation and your passion and the different ideas that you put forward here. And I'm wondering, when you write your books, do you have these conflicts being played out in some of your books? And obviously in a horror genre, you're not going to have a good outcome, but do you secretly wish that you could?
You know, horror writing for me is kind of an escape. It's my other world, you know. It's what I put out there on paper. It's what I share with people and everything. I think, honestly, if I were to write about my philosophies, my beliefs, and so on, I think that might be dangerous.
Well, Rain Dow doesn't think you're dangerous. Rain Dow thinks, and I want to put it up here because I want to thank her for her comment. She thinks you made a great summation, and just thanking you, and the idea that we should all grow really is important to her. She put a little smiley face there, and she's really appreciating our conversation today, which is about to come, very sadly, I'm sorry to say, to an end. And I always am sad when these end because there's so much more I want to talk about with each of the guests. But it's been such a great conversation. I hope people will watch it later. People will tell each other about it. People will go and find your books and my books in the Spanner series. You've got the dystopian and cynical and disastrous part of the speculative fiction continuum, and I've got the utopian and how we can look forward and be optimistic part of the continuum, and then we both work in the real world with everything in between.
Absolutely.
And so I think we have a lot in common as authors and creators of a better world, and I appreciate the work you're doing. Is there any other information or last words you want to give to our audience right now, Chase?
The only thing I'd like to say is, please, above all else, love each other, hug each other, let everybody know they matter, regardless. Because if we all start doing that, maybe that's what I would say.
I think we're all going to agree on that. And I am sorry for all the technical problems we're having today. Some of them have nothing to do with me or my computer. Some of them are unknown causes, but some of them are mine. I apologize. I'm trying to fix them. And again, I want to thank Rain and David Leopold and Sheila Strover, Rain Dowell, and anyone else that's watching that didn't decide to comment, and anyone else who watches in the future. This is Changes, Google Plus Hangout on Air with host Sally Ember. That's me. If you want to find out more about it or about me and the work that I do in hosting this, and you'd like to be on the show or recommend someone to be on the show, please go to my website, sallyember.com/changes. The schedule is there. You'll see the upcoming shows, the past shows. You can go to YouTube and watch them. They're only an hour, and you're going to wish they were more. And I also want to invite people who are authors, philosophers, inventors. We want you on our show. We want to have great conversations like this. It's on most Wednesdays from 10 to 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And David Leopold, you're so adorable. Here's what he says at the end of our show. Let's do a big virtual hug. Thank you,
Agreed.
David. You're adorable. And thank you, everybody. And thank you all for attending this whenever you've attended it and viewed it. I wish you all well. Want to say bye, Chase?
Bye, everybody. Thank you for having me. And, you know, find me on Facebook or whatever, and I look forward to talking to everybody.
And thank you for being on this show. And I say to everybody, as I do every week, I hope you do well with your changes. Signing off for today.